Hey everybody, what's going on? Mark here with an intro for you, and I'm joined by
Rob Morphy.
Robert. Thank you so very much for joining me. So before we get started with this episode, we wanted to let everyone know that Christopher is home. He is out of the hospital.
Woo!
And yeah, thank God that was scary.
Oh yeah.
But he's on the mend. He's doing better, and hopefully he'll be joining us at some point in the future. He is still under the weather, unfortunately, so we're going to give him some time to kind of get better and get back to himself to come on the show. But we just wanted to keep you guys updated that yes, our boy Chris is home. He is still not feeling great, but he's in a better spot. So that is where we want him to be. So
Here.
Excellent. Stay good, Chris. If you listen to this, keep healthy.
Feel better, buddy.
We'll be having you on the show very soon. So this week's episode we pulled from our Patreon archive, and this is at patreon.com/Cryptonaut podcast. $1 is a shout out, $5 is a shout out, and some bonus audio. So this Patreon exclusive we recorded with our buddy Derek Hayes from the Monsters Among Us podcast. We were longtime fans of his, and it was so awesome to finally get him on our show.
There is not a more erudite, more well-spoken paranormal podcaster out there. And I'm not saying that to throw anyone else under the bus. I'm just saying Derek is a cut above. And obviously we've been buddies for a long time and fans for, just as long. And so it was such a delight to actually get a chance to converse with him and to have him bring a touch of Monsters Among Us to us. He brought us these really fascinating cases and let us play around with him as both a host and a cohort on this adventure. So I could not be more grateful.
Yeah, no, totally. It was so awesome to have Derek on and to be able to actually participate like in our own version of Monsters Among Us. So we're super excited for that. Also, too, for those of you out there who are fans of paranormal caught on camera, I wanted to let everyone know, and we're not getting paid for this. This isn't a sponsorship or anything. Discovery Plus is a new streaming service that I recently got just because Paranormal Caught on Camera is on there, and there's a ton of other stuff on there, but I really did it just to see Derek. I'm not going to lie. So check it out, Discovery Plus. It's like $7 or $8 a month or something, and if you got Verizon, you get like some deal. So check it out. It's super cool. It's worth it. I love Paranormal Caught on Camera. Me and my son get to watch it together. It's so much fun. We just binge watch episodes. It's great. So check it out there. And again, this is not a sponsorship. This is just me saying, you know what? This is actually super cool. I really enjoy this show, and I hope you guys check that out. And again, that is on Discovery Plus. Also, too, we just want to put a little bit of a warning out there. For those of you that are listeners of Monsters Among Us, but have never listened to our podcast before, we are a not safe for work podcast. So please don't listen to this in front of the kids, in front of the grandparents, at the workplace, on full volume. We just don't want anybody to get misconstrued. We are a not safe for work podcast, so just keep that in mind.
Filthy men is what we are.
Yes, just keep that in mind while listening.
Wholesome, good-hearted Derek down with us. He didn't want to go. He was reluctant and fought all the way. But you know what? We dug our talents and we dragged him down to our scummy level, and we hope we can let you enjoy it in the privacy of your own ears, where other people won't get infected.
He hung out in the trash pile with us for a little bit. And
everyone likes to go to everyone wants to go to the wrong side of the tracks, wallow in the mud with the dirt bags, aka us, and then go back home, clean up, and go, Lord, thank God I don't have to live there with them. And that's kind of what happened.
Exactly. So there you have it. Enjoy the episode, Robert.
With all respect and love for recovering Chris, Mark, cue that creepy music.
Hello and welcome to the Cryptonaut Podcast Patreon edition. I am Mark Storrs, and with me as always is
Rob Morphy.
And for this very special Patreon, we are joined by Mr. Derek Hayes from the Monsters Among Us podcast and Paranormal Caught on Camera. Derek, holy shit, this has been so long in the making. It is so awesome to have you here. Thank you so very much.
Gentlemen, thank you so much for having me. It's a little bit of a dream come true for me. I've been a fan of you guys for a really long time.
Awesome. And,
well,
obviously,
shit.
the
now
same
I'm
here.
blushing. you see what you've done to me? No,
Well, not Rob,
because we're
just-
talking remotely.
Just Mark and Chris. I didn't say I was a fan of Rob's.
Douche banditry.
I got my dig in the first
no,
1
it's
minute.
Fine. No, it's fine. It's been
I'm
a
just
friendly
kidding.
rivalry between the two of us for the better part of 3 seconds now. I think that's going to be our thing now.
Yeah,
Actually,
it's the Conan and Leno of Paranormal World, right?
Oh God.
yeah. Oh,
Yeah, but that
there
was
you go.
genuine sour grapes. Conan truly got
That's
fucked
true.
by Jay Leno.
He did. Man, I hate that guy.
What a shameful. Sorry,
Oh,
we're not here
yeah,
to
sorry.
talk about that.
We don't need to derail into the Inquirer, but
I will
Indeed.
say though, in an interesting bit of crypto history. So before we started doing the Cryptonaut podcast, we had another show that we did that was like a pop culture podcast. But at the time, Rob and I were doing Cryptopia.us. So we got an email from this guy with a podcast. He's like, "Oh, hey guys, I got this cool show. You know, I take listener calls, and I was wondering if I could like advertise on your website." So I listened to the show. I fell in love with the show. I chastised
remember it well.
Rob. I'm like, "Why didn't we think about doing this first?"
Yeah,
And then
you did.
and that was actually when Derek's it was before it was Monsters Among Us. It was Here There Be Monsters. And as funny as I still have my original T-shirt because I'm a super fucking fan nerd. And I still have all the original ads that we were running on the website, like at the time for Cryptopia.us. So it's just always been there's this cool, like little, like, you know, lineage there between the two of us that's been going on forever. So it's nice to actually be able to get you on the show and, you know, finally talk to you about stuff. So
yeah, we're looking at close to 5 years now of us knowing each other. That's kind of crazy to even think about. You know, I reached out to a handful, and I won't name names, but I reached out to a handful of different cryptozoology themed websites, and they all wanted a lot of money for that advertisement. And you guys were like, we'll put it right up. I'm like, these are cool guys right here. These are my people.
Yeah, I remember listening to this show, and I'm like, oh my God, like I fell in love with it. I'm like, this is what I want to help fucking promote because this shit is cool. So I was like, yeah, just put it up. We don't give a shit. Like, just it's there. There you go. Fucking promote away. So yeah, it's kind of, you know, there's a little trip down memory lane for everybody. But bringing us to the current, as we said, Mr. Derek Hayes, recently, I mean, how long has it been now with you that you've been on Paranormal Caught on Camera?
Oh, boy. Well, with the pandemic and everything, I can't keep track of time. So let's say maybe like a year and a half, something like that, maybe 2 years.
Yeah,
it's been something like that. I honestly couldn't tell you. I'd have to sit down with a calendar and do some figuring.
Oh, it's always a kick to watch you, though. I mean, you're always there. You bring this like great, solid presence. You know, you're delivering the facts, and you know, you've got that. Obviously, as anyone who listens to you before or right now for the first time, have a phenomenal voice to carry it off with, and not a face for radio. That was not a backhanded diss, as per our brand new confrontational relationship. But no, seriously. It's awesome seeing you on the show, and you know, you have a great presence, whether it is completely audibly or seeing on TV. And of course, being able to turn on the TV and see somebody that, you know, you really like, and you know, they know their shit solidly is always fucking fun.
I appreciate that so much, Rob. Coming from you, a legend of the paranormal world, it means a ton to me. Thank you.
I mean,
I made up for my early comment.
But good Lord. There it is.
Oh, excuse me while I go take a sip of something.
I know. Clean your mouth out. Those filthy lies will leave an aftertaste.
I don't know why why is it so fun to make fun of Rob? I don't know why it is, but it's like a big brother situation. Once you start talking, you're like, you're ribbing him. I don't know. I love you, Rob. I'm just kidding you.
If there's one thing I am not, it is sensitive. We can deal with it. I've been a fat kid since word go. The skin got thick.
Nice.
But yeah, no, it's awesome. And before you finish up, it's just great to have you on. I want to just state that de facto, it has really been way too long in coming. And it's going to be great to pick your brain about some really interesting phenomena that I'm not familiar with. So I'm super duper stoked and have been ever since Mark proposed this.
Yeah, so as I mentioned, obviously a huge fan of Derek and his work for many years now. So on Derek's show, there has been a phenomenon that's been going on. It is called the Mirrored Men. I remember I remember where I was. I was at work, working second shift at the time, listening to his podcast, and this call came on, and I'm like, holy shit, this is interesting. Like, this is one of those things that catches you where you're like, oh man, there's something super creepy here. So Derek's been kind enough to shoot me over that original phone call. We're going to go over it. We're going to dissect it real quick. And then Derek's going to kind of fill us in on some information that he has. And there's not a ton of information on this, but I think Derek has enough that we can definitely, jam out on this for a little bit. So yeah, strap in. And here we go with the Mirrored Men.
Hey, just want to tell you thanks first and foremost for letting me tell the story here. Forgive me, a few of the details are a little bit fuzzy. It was about 20 years ago, a little over 20 years ago. However, what I did see still sticks with me, and it still kind of freaks me out to this day. So like I said, this was about 20, maybe even 21 years ago. I wasn't even quite yet a teenager. We had just moved, my family had just moved from our old house to the brand new house. It was just built, but the development itself was still very incomplete. A lot of dirt lots, basements already kind of dug out, construction stuff all over the place, and kind of like that. Definitely a safe place for a young kid to go run around and be an idiot in. Anyway, this would have been maybe after our first full year in the house of, it must have been early summer, maybe even late spring. I just remember it was warm out. I was dead asleep in my room, but just suddenly I had this urge. I felt very compelled to wake up. Not in a jumpy sort of way, like something startled me, but I was just very alert and very awake. This is a little bit after 2 a.m. And I also felt compelled to go walk over to one of my bedroom windows. So I walked over and I sort of crouched down so I could see. I don't know why I crouched down, but I crouched down so I could kind of see out the window a little bit better. There were some trees in our front yard. They're probably gone now, but there's some trees in our front yard that blocked my view a little bit, but you could still kind of see all the way down to the corner down the street. Probably can't now. There's obviously, like I said, this was a new development at the time. There weren't many houses then, but now your view would probably be blocked from the same window. So anyway, as I'm peering down, looking at this corner, I see 3 figures walking away from my house. They're maybe 200 to 300 feet away, somewhere in that range, and kind of moving, like I said, moving away from the house. So I'm watching them for a long moment, and I don't know why. I just woke up and felt compelled to kind of go over the window and take a peek out. And as I'm watching these figures, I notice that I just can't glean any detail. I mean, there's even a street light kind of down the street a ways, but it's just it's not enough light for me to make out exactly who or what was walking down the street. But I could see more or less the dark outlines of people. But it was really strange. As I was watching them, I noticed that they were all moving in unison, almost perfectly synced together. They're sort of in not quite a straight line, almost like an angled line, walking down what would become the sidewalk, but it was just kind of like a dirt path at the time. And they were also very, very slow. Even though they were moving kind of constantly, it didn't seem like any of their movements were in any kind of hurry. They just sort of almost glided down the street. So I'm watching them for a very long moment, and all 3 of them stop. And I don't know how to explain it. Even though I couldn't really make out any detail, I could tell that they all sort of turned their heads to look at me. There's nothing else on the street. There's no cars, no other people walking around. Like I said, it was new development. There wasn't much really out by where we lived at that point in time. All 3 of them at the same time, though, like I said, they moved in unison. They craned their heads, at least as far as I could tell, to look at me. And I don't know if you can make eye contact with something that you can't really see a face on, but I feel like we made eye contact for a moment. And whatever I was looking at, they knew that I was watching them, and they were watching me there for that long, long moment. All 3 of the figures turned around, craned their necks around to look at me. And like I said, they all moved in unison, so I could kind of see the movements happening at the same time. We had that weird moment where I knew they were watching me, and they knew I was watching them. And it was just kind of a weird, kind of tense moment. I didn't know what to do. I just kind of sat there and just kept staring. And then everything just kind of went blank, not in a pass-out kind of way. I just felt like a very long blink. And when I opened my eyes again, I was still in the same position, kind of kneeling down, looking at the window. My face was pressed up against the glass of the window. I mean, instead of 2 a.m., it was just about 9 a.m., maybe just a little bit before 9 a.m. I had blinked and misplaced about 7 hours worth of time. It was in daylight, obviously. There was, weird figures at the end of the street by the corner. Still really freaks me out, actually. 20 years later, like I said, some of the details are maybe a little bit off. And, I don't know how far away they were or, what time of year it was necessarily, but I still remember that moment when they turned around and looked at me, knowing that I was watching them. Still kind of runs chills up my spine. Anyway, thanks for letting me tell a story. Hopefully, I don't experience anything like that ever again.
All right, so there we have it. The original Mirrored Men phone call. That always sends a weird shiver up my spine, and it just makes me so friggin' uneasy every time I hear it.
Well, let's start with this. Before we get into any of the details specific to this incident, is there any moment worse in life, period, or even just your imagination when you're young, than when the monster sees you?
Yeah.
Regardless of what the thing is, when it turns to look at you, fuck.
Yeah, that, and obviously I think personally because of the missing time aspect with this and with all Mirrored Men encounters, and Derek, by all means, correct me if I'm wrong here, there's always this missing time period, sort of, that, not always, but there's a missing time period that happens where it's almost akin to like an abduction scenario.
Yeah, it seems to be that I would say every Mirrored Men case has this missing time, and that's one of the qualifying factors to one of these sightings is, missing time, the three figures that move in a mirrored motion. It's usually in a rural location. That's a big one. It's like this was a cul-de-sac that was being, like a development that was being built. I had a guy in a deer stand. I had a guy up actually here by me in California that was hiking on our mountain here, and one of his friends became separated, and she was separated for hours. And when they found her, she thought she was gone for 30 minutes and claimed seeing 3 robed men walk by. So,
wow.
There's all these elements of bad weather. That's another one that fog, snow, rain. It's just some sort of strange weather, or not even strange, just not a sunny day, I guess would be the best way to say it. These are some of the common tropes to these Mirrored Men encounters that if they hit like a certain amount of these, I kind of just loop it into that Mirrored Men category. You know what I mean?
Well, absolutely.
Yeah, totally. And that was the other thing that I was going to bring up, is that when I originally heard this obviously being, it was the first time I had ever heard, of such a sighting. But then, Derek, you started receiving more phone calls about it, which it seemed like there was actually quite a lot. I don't know the exact number, but I know whenever you have an episode out, you'll put like Mirrored Men in the title, and I'm like, oh, I got to check this out. So, and this isn't a phenomenon that I had ever heard of, and I've been doing this with Rob now for so many years that's what really caught me about this is like legitimately something new that's happening.
Yeah, I'd never heard of this either. Full disclosure, when I started the show, I didn't have a network or anything behind me. It was just some idiot in a garage with a microphone he bought on Amazon. So I was begging for phone calls. So I got a hold of everybody I knew that ever told me a story. And I thought of my friend Matt from college, who told me the story about, these figures. So I called him up and I said, man, would you please just call this story in for me? And I honestly thought that would be it. It would be a one-off and I'd have to find another story. Well, I played Matt's call, as you guys heard. And over the next couple of weeks, I received, I think, 6 calls about these, and they were almost identical stories, not to each other, but just all together, the same characteristics: the 3 men, the mirrored motion, the bad weather, the missing time. All this stuff seemed to be elements of every one of these stories. And since then, we're looking at almost 5 years now. I bet you I've had 24 solid Mirrored Men reports come in. And most of them have been shared on the show. I have a couple that I'm holding back. You can't let them all out at once, but there's so many of these things. I have no idea where they're coming from. I didn't know this was a phenomenon. I couldn't find a name for it anywhere. And like my dream came true in my first 6 months of running a podcast. I got to name a monster. So I kind of came up with Mirrored Men because that's essentially what they are. They're 3 men that are completely mirrored in their movement. And a lot of people, I won't get into where people think they come from just yet. We'll probably touch on that here in a bit, but a lot of people think they might be interdimensional, and that could be the reason that there's three of them. It's some sort of visual impairment we have in our dimension. We're not able to see theirs.
The old dimensional eyes. Rob knows a lot about that.
I'm glad, because I don't.
I don't. I just know that that's what Mark calls it when you see things. We recently tackled the Stickmen, and that too has an element that seems to be dimensional in the sense, though I won't digress on this too far. When they turn in profile, they become invisible. So we discussed the idea because very often we use the term interdimensional to mean alternate world or parallel Earth or whatever. And all of that may be valid, but when you're talking strictly speaking interdimensionally, you're really talking about the different dimensions of existence, 1st through 11, I guess, if you believe in string theory. So it's interesting to think that if these things are from, be it a parallel world or truly our world, but an alternate dimension of it, and you see a triptych because, as you suggested, or as Mark fucking dubs them, dimensional eyes, and as you suggested, some optical illusion, a little more rationally, God bless you, then that really is interesting. It's also interesting to think that maybe there is something in another universe, another type of reality that maybe even has slight variations on the type of physics that are natural to that realm and perhaps not ours, where things exist in threes. It seems weird. It seems like something Stan Lee and Jack Kirby would have done a comic about in the late 60s just for shits and giggles and to fill fucking pages. But to me, it's intriguing to think that there are a lot of ways this could work, none of which make really logical sense to us, of something that is evidently one thing, or at least of one consciousness or one physicality to move at the same time, yet we interpret it as three separate, albeit identical beings.
Yeah. I believe it was like a YouTube video. I was doing some research on this very subject because I'm not a smart man, as Forrest Gump
says. To that, for the record.
So, I wanted to at least have a general idea of understanding of what this description was. And the way I saw it described to me was your first dimension is a sheet of paper. It's flat. Your second dimension is you fold that piece of paper, and now it has two edges, I guess. The third would be you ball it up, and now it's a three-dimensional object. But your fourth dimension, what do you do to that piece of paper to make it represent the fourth dimension? Whatever it is, we're not going to be able to see it.
Exactly.
Or it's not going to appear correctly. One of the two.
Right.
So it may appear as three identical pieces because that's how the fourth dimension is displayed to us.
Absolutely. And I find that I find this really intriguing because, again, as Mark illustrated so well and you followed up on, this is not a phenomenon I was familiar with, and I don't, claim to know certainly all paranormal phenomenon, but I definitely like to have a broad overview. So I was really excited to hear about this, and this is literally, for some reason, I just didn't hear this episode of your pod, though I don't know how I missed it, and sort of mind blown because it is really unique and it doesn't easily fit into categories. The missing time element, obviously, we all instantly think of, everything since Betty and Barney Hill in terms of alien abduction. And there might well be an interaction with these witnesses, either something instigated by these things because they take the time to pick you out and are doing whatever the hell they're doing, and then you wake up 7 hours later or whatever the duration is, or and this something is even more possibly intriguing to me, if you happen to be able to perceive them for whatever reason, you just happen to be more observant than most, you have some psychic ability that might be latent, for whatever reason you're able to tune them in, maybe they feel obliged to figure out why and to test you out and figure it out. Either way, it's fascinating and it's haunting. I can't imagine what it would really be like to have missing time, because that, I think, if it ever happened to me, would really, as I suppose it has many abductees, F me the F up. Like, I don't know if I'd be able to process that in any healthy way for a long time.
Yeah, something else too with the Mirrored Men that I always thought was kind of interesting is that there seems to be an aspect of being compelled. where, you know, like Matt said. So it's not like you're just coming across this. I mean, I know in some calls people have to just come across it, but there is some sort of like compelling. Can you explain that a little bit, Derek?
Yeah, you know, I think back to this, I believe it was in Iowa or possibly Illinois. In that general area, there was a call, I call it the deer stand call because it was submitted anonymously. This guy was hunting in his deer stand, and he got there, you know, kind of pre-morning, and there was birds chirping, animals moving around. He got up in his stand, and suddenly he sees three figures walking toward him, and the animals don't stop, you know, making sounds or anything like that. So he's kind of watching them, but they're at a distance. He can't really make out detail. So he does what people are not supposed to do while you're hunting, by the way. He brings his rifle to his eye and looks through his scope to kind of get an idea of what, you know, what these people were. And the second he did that, he said all the animals stopped, and in sequence or in mirrored movement, they all turn and look at him at the exact same time. And he thinks it was the gun. It was aiming the rifle at them that instigated this kind of contact that they made. Otherwise, they weren't paying any attention to him. So then at that moment, that's when he basically blacked out. He woke up on the ground, his gun shoved into the dirt next to him. And he said it was 7 hours later. So in my mind, there is some sort of, that doesn't really answer your question, Mark, but there's some sort of like a call and response, I guess.
Right.
If you see them, you have to do something to interact to get their attention, I guess.
Right.
This guy was aiming the gun. There's another story, I think this one's out of Missouri, where this was a long-held family legend. You know, if you see three people moving in unison, look away, don't make eye contact, walk away, get out of there as fast as you can. And that was a warning that this, I can't remember if it was a father, grandfather, like a father figure gave these kids growing up. And of course, at some point on a gas station, they actually ran into these things and they remembered that advice and took off. And that was, I think, maybe the third entry I got. So there was some sort of call to action here. I can't put my finger on exactly what it is.
Yeah, which is interesting, and like you said, with that look away, you know, walk away, like don't interact with them. That's and actually that's on the Mirrored Man T-shirt, right?
It is, yeah.
It is, yeah. And where can people get that T-shirt at, Derek?
Oh, you can go to monstersamonguspodcast.com and click on the shop tab, and you can pick them up there.
Hell yeah, there it is. Remember, alwa's push product. Hellerspace.com. Always push product. Hellerspace.
The Mark
Patreon.
Store's credo. So, Derek, in specific, the children that were warned by, you say, this father figure and grew up, they did not experience missing time. Did I interpret that right?
Oh boy, that's a good question. It's been so long since I've heard that one. I can't remember off the top of them. I don't believe so. I don't think with that particular instance, because they recognized the threat and took off. So maybe that's why it didn't happen. But I don't recall missing time in that particular story.
What I'm intrigued with, and in a second I want to ask you what you think about this, but what I'm intrigued with about these accounts so far is that if they were literally knocked out for, say, 10 minutes, even a half hour, you could almost think that the triple look is the foreshadowing to the eyewitness being rendered unconscious so that they can make their escape. They just don't want to be seen. Don't you fucking look at me, as the song says. And they were just gonna scoop. But the fact that so many hours are involved, either that means it's a really potent either psychic message or some other thing that they're doing. I mean, for all we know, they just have the technology to erase a big block of time, and they could literally be taking these guys out for tea, giving them a nice ham and cheese sandwich and saying, hey, we don't really like to be looked at. You're going to forget all but the beginning of it, trying to let it ruin your life. We're actually good dudes. This is Bill. It's Ray. I'm Tim. It's all good. We just do this thing. And we live in the corners of your world where you don't usually see us, and you can't. So whatever it is, the fact that but the fact that it's so many hours to me really indicates possibly, and I understand it's a real possibly that they might actually be interacting in some way. Maybe completely unlike alien abductions, but maybe not. Do you have any? Any insights based on any of the calls or any ideas about that before we get into more of the potential origin and other aspects of this?
Well, my first thought when you're saying all that is that imagine all the people that aren't aware that this happened to them. Kind of, let's say I'm driving down the road and I see these figures make eye contact, and the next thing I know, I'm still driving down the road, but it's hours later, and I just think, oh man, I kind of blacked out, and I don't remember driving that, but I don't recall any of the mirrored men, quote unquote, part of the experience.
What blows
I wonder
my
if there's a
mind
lot of
about
people
that,
there, because there's a lot
Derek,
of missing time stories out there.
I'm going to only interrupt you briefly because I definitely want to continue on this thought. If it is the anomaly, those few people that remember, and not, the exception rather than the rule, if the memory erasure is supposed to take you to just before you saw them, but occasionally they just dick up the time by 30 seconds or whatever on the dial, the old mind erase dial, and then these people can report. To think that it might be a much larger number is haunting and, at least to me, terrifyingly plausible.
Well, everything's plausible when you start talking about stuff like this. I mean, it may be a long shot, but anything's plausible.
Right.
Like I said, I get so many missing time stories. I have a folder with probably 30 missing time stories in it right now. And I'd say all of them are without explanation. There's no cause for this to happen. So that's kind of the conclusion, or that's the jump I was making there. I wasn't just offering like, oh, it could be even worse. But there are these calls that don't have an explanation. Are they aliens? Are they just people losing track of time? Like, what is going on here? But it's important to point out that this could be happening to people that just simply don't remember.
Absolutely. And, it's interesting because very often, as you well know, being, in this biz, as it were, missing time, especially when it's portrayed on television documentaries or things you get on Amazon Prime or whatnot, are always associated with alien abduction events. At least I've never seen the documentary. There's just missing time. These people just don't know what happened. And it's not, something horrible like a brain aneurysm, because then your car would be wrapped around the telephone pole or something else. And maybe you certainly would have had other debilitating symptoms probably before and certainly after. If you just miss a whole night's worth of time, especially if you're doing something that takes precision like driving and you're fine, that really could represent a phenomenon that demands a deeper understanding, and to have people look into it, not just paranormal scholars and investigators, but legitimate neuroscientists, because that's like I said earlier, for me that would be utterly terrifying. I would dwell on that missing time so much that I would be dumb about it. I'd have one of those charts with yarn and thumbtacks and ridiculous shit, even though it would have no bearing on it. I had cookies at 6. How does this relate to that? It'd be fucking stupid, but I would.
I ignored Mark's text message approximately at 7:30. I
just
told
so
him I forgot
Mark,
my
whenever
phone.
I ignore your text messages, it's missing time. It's always missing time.
I figured as much, and
usually
much like Chris as well.
A missing phone. But sometimes it's missing
it
time.
could be maybe you're seeing a mirrored man, the mirrored men every week, and you're just like dropping your phone because you're so mesmered by their fucking sweetness. So
it's usually because I fall asleep watching something like Boggy Creek or some dumb shit from the 70s that I absolutely love, like an old episode of In Search of, and then I wake up later and read your text.
Yeah, I know, and I appreciate that you get back to me at like 3 a.m. when I'm trying to sleep. It's totally awesome of you. I totally appreciate.
What are friends for? What are friends for?
So, Derek, with all these calls and all the research that I'm sure you've done on this, what do you think? What other information and what are you pulling from this?
Well, for people that don't know me, I'm highly skeptical. I am not a quote unquote believer of the paranormal. I like to call myself a hopeful skeptic, meaning that I want this stuff to be real. I'm doing everything I can to try to prove that it's real, but that doesn't necessarily mean that I think everything is real or has the possibility of. That said, this is a phenomenon I don't really grasp. I don't know the origins. I don't know why. I don't know anything other than the few clues that I get from these handful of calls. And for the most part, I haven't really had an opportunity to interview any of these people. That's just not the format of my show. They call in, leave a message, and that's the contact for the most part. I am friends with my buddy Matt, and I've kind of been holding off on that. I don't want to have him tell his story just yet. I'm going to do something cool and special with that eventually, but I don't know. To answer your question, I honestly don't know. To me, sometimes I look at this phenomenon, I think, well, this is like Men in Black. There's a lot of aspects to this that are very similar to the MIBs that have been reported from Keel on up. Well, I guess probably Shag Harbor on all the way up. The other element would be like some of these, I don't even know what to call them, little folk, people of the woods, those kind of people, the Fae, I guess. Yeah. There's, the missing time element. There's a description I forgot to give of these entities, that their faces are stretched is usually how they're reported. As in their mouth is like frog shaped, real wide. Their eyes are big and kind of bulging. They've kind of dark features. And another strange thing about it is people that have claimed to see their heads move from side to side say that there's a lag. Like their face doesn't catch up with their head. Like it's so hard to describe. But let's just say your face is made of Jello and you turn your head really fast. Your face isn't going to go with your head.
It's just so gross.
I don't know. Again, that it all leads back to some sort of interdimensional situation. But again, I'm not a bright enough person to figure all this stuff out. So I just throw out options, and hopefully somebody smarter than me listens and picks something up and answers this big riddle for me.
Welcome to the motherfucking
this is
club.
What we do every week.
So I just described cryptozoology, I think, pretty much.
Yeah, exactly. You described all paranormal fucking studies to a T. This really kind of is intriguing me, this description of the heads. I had just been perceiving them as having a blank face because I didn't know what else. So they're distended horizontally for the most part, or horizontally and vertically, Derek?
I think horizontally only. They're usually described as having like a bullfrog face. I believe like Caucasian males, darker, like clean-cut hair. That's the other thing. They're seen wearing different garb each time. Sometimes they're seen in robes. That was going to be my next question. Yeah, sometimes it's robes. Sometimes it's a tweed suit from back in the day was one of the descriptions given. Yeah, but those are usually the two big ones. And then, plain street clothes, but they match. Obviously everything matches.
Of course. So different garbs, distended faces, but of course the thing that probably caught everyone's ear and mine is the delayed turn. Almost as if, the Jello analogy was apt as shit, but I was thinking though it makes even less sense, as if the face is either contained within the head, or possibly like a hologram or like a televised image where it can broadcast on any side of the surface, but is not necessarily like a human head or any biological life form on Earth. It's not that has a face. It's not just where it is and you can move the features. It can literally just, careen around this fucking surface. That really puts this in a place that I've never heard of before in terms of cryptids, aliens, or any other paranormal lore. That's a really unique attribute that is, stunningly original.
Do you remember the 80s horror franchise Critters?
Oh, hell yes.
Oh, yeah, totally.
So the bounty hunters on Critters had that head that could morph into anything. They mimicked the rock star and Charlie, the town drunk. It kind of, Rob, what you're describing is kind of reminding me of that a little bit, where the head's a television set, essentially, and you can put that face anywhere you want. But when they turn that head, like digitally, it just takes a second for it to catch up. Is that pretty much what you're describing?
100%. And yes, I love Critters. I actually just watched the most recent one yesterday, just because I love the damn franchise so much. I wanted to see where it ended up. Not as good. The Scott Grimes original is the jam, but still.
Right.
Brilliant. But I wasn't even thinking when I said that the boundaries, but the way it had that kind of like static on the face. But yes, this idea that like somehow digitally, like the consciousness is being projected through, or maybe not even consciousness, like maybe they're trying to look a certain way because for them it seems like camouflage. I mean, if you're dealing with life forms that you recognize at least as being marginally intelligent, say the human race, and you want to look like them, but you are so different. You are just so foreign to what is found on Earth that you could honestly make a case for, like, they got faces, they wear clothes, they're seen walking together. You could plop a entity of 3 down and maybe think you're doing a bang up job of camo, when for every human being that sees you, they're like in a state of mortal fucking terror and surreality.
Yeah.
Yeah,
it's
which
fucking
actually
nuts.
That actually sort of brings it to the MIB too, because they've been described as being, obviously, awkward and weird faces and contorting and just doing things that are totally out of, the ordinary.
And don't forget swarthy skin.
Yep,
that's another hallmark of MIB reports.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
like they were dumped in a body that doesn't fit them.
Exactly. So it's kind of interesting though too, that with the Mirrored Men, that they can kind of fit into the MIB, area, and also too because of the missing time. It just kind of neat how it all sort of connects. And it's what's super cool about this is that this is a phenomenon that's currently happening. Like, it's out there right now going on. Someone right now could be witnessing this. So
yeah, exactly. And there's another element that I've never explored before, and this is going to be the day I'm going to do it. What if this is some sort of like military weaponry? I'd have to go back and look at all the locations that the stuff was, where the Mirrored Men were seen. But if you think about, if you're like in combat, it would be beneficial to have 2 holograms of yourself, so you wouldn't know who to aim at, right? Maybe that's beneficial. The time loss thing is a huge benefit in any kind of battle. I'm just thinking that maybe, I don't think it's likely, and it certainly isn't at the top of my list, but it's fun to kind of come up with these ideas and especially see what you guys think of them. What if it is some sort of weaponized projection or something like that, paired with the ability to scramble the brain and make them forget 8 hours?
I mean, DARPA would drool over just the possibility of it. And I think we all believe, whether or not you think that there's a full-on Solar Warden space fleet, which, seems pretty effing dubious, but we know that the tech that the key top guys are working on are probably, certainly in aspects of camouflage, weaponry, and other things that can be used on a battlefield, probably at least 10 to 15, maybe more years in advance of what we would probably think is available. And to create, like you say, literal mirrored images of the individual, whether they're robe clad or tweed clad or whatever else, and maybe that hologram technology, just like real life hologram technology took forever to work out, is just a little quirky, a little off. I mean, that could be a possibility. And another side of that, just creating an image of some sort, of a 3-person image with like just weird distended features, would be a great way to intimidate an enemy. Sure. I mean, you see that walking down, the road in, Kabul or wherever, you're going to like take pause. You might not even, and if they're not physically there, the shooting wouldn't make a difference. You could really psychologically mess with people. And if somehow you can tie that in, like you say, with some sort of brain scrambling that, renders the victim unconscious for
that's a technical term, by the way, right?
Yeah, no, that's definitely it. That's science. Yeah. That's my neurobiological background speaking there.
It's in your medical journal,
Absolutely. It's fascinating to think, like say, it wouldn't be top on my list either, because it's just so fucking wonky. It's so absolutely wonky. And I know a lot of the mountains, like Shasta and whatever, have robed beings that are seen on there that tie in with potential abductions, certainly creepy interactions, where a lot of people believe there's like extraterrestrial bases between various mountains throughout, obviously the entirety of the American Southwest, and, that famous plateau I'm drawing a blank on. Dulce, yes. But also like in the mountains of California and other places where, the aliens are underneath. And if you go back, because we always got to get our pop culture on to the $6 Million Man, the aliens lived in the mountain and controlled the robot Bigfoot to help keep people away. So that's I'm just saying.
Exactly what's happening right here, I think.
It just makes sense the Mirrored Men are involved with mountain aliens and the Bigfoot. Because, I mean, it's just flawless logic.
Well, to ground this a tiny bit in reality, are you guys familiar with the Glimmer Man phenomenon that's been going on?
Yeah, actually, I was telling Rob about it, and you and I've discussed it a couple of times.
Yeah, we did.
It does sort of tie it with that particular, with those sightings. It definitely leads towards military tech, 100%.
For those that aren't familiar, the Glimmerman, I think the Expanded Perspective guys actually got to name that one. Is essentially like the Predator from the films. It's that camouflage look. And I've received a handful of calls about that, a couple pretty infamous ones actually out of the state of Idaho. But these are like human-shaped figures that are perfectly disguised with this predator-like camouflage. And a lot of people think this is all military. This is not aliens, nothing like that. This is some sort of military technology that they're out using in public to kind of gauge how successful it really is. Can you fool John Q. Public? And a lot of these cases, I don't know if they're fooled, but they're terrified. So if they're doing that, and I've seen some news reports that claim that this stuff is real, and these are viable news sources. This isn't another paranormal source. Not to say the paranormal sources aren't viable. Anybody write me any letters or anything.
Man.
So are you telling me that this wasn't from InfoWars? Is that what you're saying?
That's what
Alex Jones was screaming about the Glimmerman coming to take over at FEMA area, Texas, or whatever he talks about. That's my Alex Jones impression. Thank you.
That was great. That was spot on. So this is an interesting separate thing. The idea that that the military may have active blending camo, which of course, makes you think back to the whole degaussing thing, which a lot of people say is bunk, but there is a possibility it happened of the Philadelphia experiment, wherein something was trying to be rendered not just invisible to radar like degaussing really did, but optically invisible. And obviously that goes into time travel and all sorts of mayhem. And at some point, as I say to the listeners all the time, we will be dealing with that, but not right now. But this has been a holy grail for military forever. To be invisible or virtually invisible is to have an advantage unsurpassed, except for invulnerability on a battlefield.
Yeah, totally.
Or even for spies sneaking or any number of other military applications.
Imagine implementing this in searching for Bigfoot. If I had one of these suits, could I find Bigfoot?
Now, I would say you would exponentially have increased your chances. Mark would say he would use his interdimensional nostrils to sniff you out and you'd never see him, and he'd fly away with 14 angels and 2 grays. But
listen,
I'll leave that for Mark to explain.
Bigfoot shows up when you need Bigfoot to show up.
Oh, God bless. So now he's Quantum Leap. Now he's Sam. That's what he does. He just shows up because you need some squatching.
An angel to some, a demons to other. Bigfoot or Hellraiser, one of the two.
Or it's like that old show Highway to Heaven, just Bigfoot and an angel shows up to these towns and fixes problems.
Yeah, everybody.
That show would have been a hell of a lot better if it had been Michael Landon and a Bigfoot.
It would,
not throwing the other guy under the bus. It could have been him in the Bigfoot outfit, but it just would have been so much cooler.
He was pretty hairy anyway. He had a big old beard on him. I mean,
he sure did.
A little makeup. I can't think of that guy's name, but I used to love that show when I was a kid.
Oh yeah, it was fun. It was definitely fun, and he was on Little House, so he and Landon went way the fudge back.
So Derek's going to get his his military tech. He's going to get out there. He's going to find the interdimensional Bigfoot. I'm sure at some point he's going to answer, like he's going to solve the Mirrored Men. He's like, guys, I got it. It was in fact Tim, Jerry, and who was the other one? Matt or whoever it was.
It was like Ron, Don, and John or something.
Yeah,
Tim,
they got it wrong.
Billy? I don't know. I forgot. I never actually met him. It's speculative names. Who knows?
Definitely.
Could be Phil. So, there's a lot of
knows
options.
A guy that knows a guy that knows them. So,
Yeah, there you go.
I would like to honest to God believe, though, that unlike all the probing and vile surgical things and shit up your nose that allegedly take place during the bulk of so-called alien abductions, that this is just like a whole different thing. Like they lay out a picnic, like they've got like a little interdimensional checkered picnic blanket in their pocket that they can fold out to ridiculous lengths, and it's just like that never-ending basket of food, like in a Tom and Jerry cartoon. And they're just there
those
to just
hot
talk
dogs
it out
that are all
with
linked together.
Yes. Oh, and the best.
A baguette sticking out of the basket.
And you just sit down, and you know what? The reason why it takes so long is that they're in no rush to convince you. As long as it takes for them to finally get you to go, yeah, I guess you're right. You probably should erase my memory. It'd be better off for all of us. And they'll just take 2 hours, 7 hours, a day if they need to. And you're just going to eat well, drink some wine, nothing too sweet, just nice, classy stuff, and hang out with the Mirrored Men until they finally you're like, oh, yeah, no, all right, do the thing. And then it's just the most relaxed, happy thing ever. Because
Rob,
I just want, for one time missing time, not to suck the balls, all the varnish off the balls, and leave you fucking just with dry nuts, varnish free, fucking wondering what happened.
Yeah, and more than likely, I think, as we all know, experiencing just some completely horrendous shit. So, yeah, I mean...
Oh, they're probably doing even worse shit, let's be honest. They're probably, like, taking off all your limbs, rearranging them, laughing at you, laughing at your genitals no matter what they are, and attaching them to your forehead, and then finally putting you back together right and sending you home and telling you, shut the fuck up about us, even though you won't remember this.
Oh, man.
I'll tell you this much, though, guys. When it comes to the Mirrored Man, if I do solve the mystery, you will never hear about it. I'm going to use that technology and become a conjillionaire. I don't know what's bigger than a trillion, but think about how much you would pay to go to work 40 hours a week and not remember a second of it. How much would you guys pay for that?
I honestly, it's more than I make a year. So, yeah, 100%. I would.
If I make
100%.
half of what, I'm going to be.
Oh, my God.
So
every shitbag experience you got to endure, just be like, nope. It was just a string of happiness. Little contented moments on the couch with your lady friend or your wife watching a movie, to the time I ate ice cream, to that great orgasm, to my favorite book, and none of the bullshit in between.
Yeah,
that'd be great.
There it is. And that is how Derek is going to solve the mystery of the Mirrored Men.
That's why Derek's going to solve the mystery.
That's damn right.
That's right. All right. So we got one more call here that Derek sent us that we're going to go over. And he brought up Bigfoot. And we're going to, we actually don't talk a lot about Bigfoot on the Cryptonaut podcast. I think we did what? We did the killer Bigfoot, Rob, right?
We did.
So it's one of those things that we just don't ever really cover.
And
obviously,
the Copalis Cowman, which was another hyper aggressive Bigfoot. Before we get started, Mark, hold on. I gotta get Derek's take on this. We already know how Mark feels. The whole interdimensional cosmic mind, fucking beatnik Bigfoot. And I tend to, be on the more corporeal side of it. Maybe it's an early hominid. We could be very closely related to it, probably even closer than the chimp. But it is some sort of fauna that I believe is natural to Earth. Before we get kicking on this, Derek, let's get what you think about A, the legitimacy of it, and B, where you think it fits on that spectrum.
Well, let's start with the legitimacy. This is going to break some hearts, but I don't think there's a Bigfoot in every 50 states of the United States and all around the world. I just don't think it's going to work that way. These things, if they exist, in order for them to stay undetected the way they have to be in extremely small numbers. They have to be out in the middle of nowhere, places where humans have literally never walked. And believe it or not, those places still do exist in this country. That said, if these things were to exist, in my mind, they would have to be highly intelligent, which would suggest that they are some sort of very close relative of the human race. Much closer than, like you said, chimps or bonobos or mountain gorillas, anything, way closer than that. They would have to be highly intelligent. Like I said, it would be like a tribe, I would say, of strange looking people would basically be what my suggestion would be. They'd have to have some sort of communication. They wouldn't be able to survive without it. They would have to, they would be ninjas, I guess would be the best way to say it. They would have to be ninjas in the forest for
appellation for a Bigfoot.
Yeah, for them to remain undiscovered this long, they would have to apply every bit of that intelligence to staying undetected. And there are species that do that. There's people that set up game cameras all over Sumatra to catch the pygmy rhinoceros. I think I have that right. And after like 10 years, they finally caught a picture. And that's a stupid rhino. I mean, right. No offense to rhinos out there, but they're not the smartest animals compared to a Sasquatch.
Our rhino fan base is not going to be pleased with this.
Yeah, they're going to be real pissed about that. Sorry, David. David the rhino.
He already canceled his Patreon subscription.
So don't even worry about
We're
it.
good to go. Well, then screw the rhinos.
Yeah.
So if to me it'd have to be something like that. I would say they're almost human. Perhaps Neanderthal. Maybe Gigantopithecus was smarter than we thought. Something along. Maybe it's just a tribe of humans that wear furs. I honestly don't know. But to me, those are the elements that have to be there for this to be real.
No, I understand exactly what you're saying. I agree with literally almost all of what you just said. I know that there are some people that think they are like a subculture of Native Americans that just have always existed that way and passed that tradition on. I don't find that to be plausible, simply because even though many might indulge in such a lifestyle choice, and certainly a lot of people have fallen off the map and tried to live, au naturel, especially in the Pacific Northwest and up through British Columbia and any place else where there's wilds, much like going English for the Amish, some would eventually come out and be like, yeah, no, that, the berries and the sticks in my ass and all that shit wasn't for me. I needed a bed and, 3D movies and whatever. But that having been said, I do think like the Almas or Almasti, depending on, what region it's from in Russia, they definitely associate that with a pelt wearing Neanderthal-like creature. And I think that is certainly plausible. But while I do not think at all Bigfoot is Gigantopithecus, because if it was a huge 10-foot tall lumbering ape, we would fucking know. I do think they are related to us. I think it would still have to be an other, like a Homo erectus or something, an early offshoot, very hairy hominoid or hominid that just as it evolved like us, increased its brain power, became very proficient at not only hiding, but foraging and also disposing of the remains of its dead. All the things you would need to do to stay the fuck out of the public eye. So in terms of that, I think you and I are in the same boat.
Sorry, Mark.
Hey, I'm here with my interdimensional Bigfoot shaman banner doing my thing. We got a subreddit, we got a lot of Facebook groups. It's cool, but yeah, let's delve into this possible encounter with the Bigfoot.
Hey Derek, this is Mike from Mississippi. I was just listening to a podcast and heard that my story didn't come through. It's too staticky, so I figured I'd record it and email it to you. That way the quality would be a little bit better than trying to be on a recorded phone line. Like I said, I was out deer hunting. I was in a climb stand, and I climbed about 30 foot up, and I was sitting there. I lost my balance, and foot got out from underneath me, and I fell. Didn't have a safety harness on or anything like that. I should have, and I do from this point on. But I fell, and shoot, I was 30 foot up in a tree, so. What was that? Anyway, I fell and hit the bottom rung limbs. I was in a big oak tree. When I hit the bottom limbs, it's probably 8 to 10 foot off the ground when I hit. And they kind of caught me, but I later found out that I had broken my back and I couldn't move. But when I hit, I passed out. I blacked out. And I wear glasses, and my glasses fell off. My gun went somewhere. I later found it, but at the time, it just fell. Didn't have it with me. Wasn't tied to anything. It just fell. So I get awoken off the tree with agonizing pain, and I'm being, like I said, I'm 8 to 10 foot off the ground laying on these trees, and I'm 5'10", 320, 325. I'm not a little guy. But I was being lifted off these limbs and supported underneath my neck and on my rear end by just these gigantic hands. And my glasses fell off, and without those, man, I am blind. I can't see a piece of paper 3 foot from me. I can't see unless it's right up on me. So my glasses fell off, and what happened next is still troubling. I was lowered to the ground by this creature. I guess you're going to call it a big, Bigfoot, Sasquatch, whatever your deal on that is. And it was a female, and I say it was a female because the first thing it had a and it had a feminine looking face. If that makes sense, it wasn't. I hear a lot of people on these podcasts talk about it looked like a big silverback gorilla and all that. This wasn't that. It was ape-like, but like the cheekbones and the face was more slender than you would look like. I'd say if I looked at gorillas online or in the zoo or pictures, the big old wide face and all that. It was more of a contoured face, and she was also had breasts, and the breasts were she was lactating. And I'm sitting there in agony, man, and I'm scared to death. I don't know what is going on. And she takes her breast and puts it in my mouth, and she tries to get me to drink milk from her breast. And she squeezes her breast, and a little bit of milk gets in my mouth, and it is disgusting. I'm talking about it's just the nastiest thing I've ever tasted. But she, during this time, is being so nurturing. It reminded me, now looking back on it, looking at videos of Coco the gorilla with her kittens, how she would nudge them and love on them and try to get them close to her. And she could, generally could tell that she cared. That's what this gorilla, she was, she was worried about me. And it's really weird. While all that was going on, man, I'm panicking, but I can't move. I got taken to the hospital later after I was found. After I didn't come home, they came out looking for me, and I had a broken back. But as she was doing that, back behind her, there was something much, much larger than she was. And we have wild boars here in the South, in Mississippi. I live in central Mississippi, right on the Alabama line. And we have wild pig here that they're pretty big. They can get 260, 300 pounds for a wild boar. They can do a lot of damage. But what was behind her, I never saw the full vision of it because I couldn't see that far. But the sound that it made, it was like it was communicating with her, but it was so deep and so guttural. And it's just like it went through my chest and went all into my body, and it was pulsating. And man, when I heard that, I knew that I was either something was coming to kill me. I was done for. But she turned around and she would kind of communicate, like do her little noise, and then it got really aggressive and light. And then she kind of pushed me away, not really aggressively, but kind of like, okay, I'm through. And then she got up and she left. But man, I'm telling you, whatever that was behind her, I'm glad that it didn't come over there. Man, it just sounded like just a beast. And it just shook me to my core whenever it made that noise. I could feel it in my whole body, like it was sitting on my chest. And like I said, a few left, and whatever was in the woods with her left too. I'm suspecting that was a male. And then my family come and found me, because I hadn't come home and it was getting dark and things. All this was happening later. When I woke up, whenever I was lifted, it was probably around 5:30, 6. So it was almost dark then, but it was so low lit. And then I really don't know time. It was dark and my family came and found me. I'm really not sure what time that was. But I didn't come home, and they knew where I was going hunting at. That's one thing. And all you hunters out there, if you hunt by yourself, if you got the iPhone app or any Android apps that's got any kind of find me, cut that on, or let your family members know where you're going and go where you say you're going. If I would have snuck off somewhere else, I would have laid there probably, no telling what would have happened. If that big thing wouldn't have got me, man, we got coyotes down here and bobcats, and if I couldn't move and I was just laying there helplessly, man, ain't no telling what could happen. And where you harness in the tree, man, that's so important. Number one, I'm not getting back in the tree, but if I do, then, I'm going to have to, you got to wear a harness if you're up there. But that's my story. Appreciate it.
Saved by
Wow.
a Bigfoot.
That's just, well, it's insane on a lot of levels, but you know what? I know we're all taken aback. There's that 14-year-old in all of us.
Mm-hmm.
There was some titties. We know there was some titties.
There was some
Let's all
definite-
acknowledge that there was some titties.
There's some Bigfoot titty.
And you know what? Maybe your first instinct when you see a wounded fellow hominid is to be like, this poor motherfucker's got to be hungry. And you know what? I've got food. I had a couple Squatch babies, and I'm gonna throw it up in there because at least it's thirsty. It probably knows, based on what we were discussing just minutes ago, how intelligent they must be, that things dehydrate pretty quickly. And if you don't, have some hydration when you're injured, you're done. She didn't know that luckily his family would be around soon. So listen, I mean, I get it. It's as much as I want to get caught up in the antics of this account. What I am most impressed with is all of the things that make me feel like this is not something fabricated. From the tone of this guy's voice to the fact that he stressed hunting safety so hard. Like, that's not something a liar would always think to do. Like,
no,
they were talking about, I'm going to talk about Bigfoot titty and I'm going to throw Derek off and it's going to be great. And I'm not trying to imitate his accent in a negative way. I mean, I'm just saying, like, I don't think he was going that way.
No, because he was legitimately in some fucking peril. Like, if you fall from a tree like that, like you could that could have been it for him. That he would have not made that call. He would have just expired if not the Bigfoot came to the rescue.
Well, he did break his back.
Exactly.
He said he spent full disclosure on this call as well. There's so many backstories to every one of these calls. Mac actually had called in once before with a story, but because of the location he called from, the quality was so bad I couldn't air it. I could hear the story, but I couldn't hear it well enough that I shared it with my Patreon just because it was such a sensational call. Right. And then I put a call out. I said, Mac, if you hear this, please call me back and retell this story, please. And thankfully, a week later he did. But the two stories, they're not identical word for word, but they're identical detail for detail, which to me is a very big tell in that he's probably telling the truth, because it's really difficult to tell a lie like that 2 weeks, 3 weeks apart. It may even been longer than that, honestly. And he didn't have reference. He doesn't have the recording that I have. Like, he couldn't go back and reference the story he told me unless he recorded it as he did it. But there's just so, like Rob said, there's so many things here. The emotion in his voice, you can hear the story about him breaking his back. You could tell that's a lot of pain for him. You can hear it in his voice. And then when this creature shows up and the fear of the male creature, like, just all this emotion. That's why I love the calls on my show. And it's through no fault of my own or no work of my own. It's just, you can hear the emotion in people's voices. You can read encounters all day long. You can read books, website entries, but if you hear it in the witness's own words, uninterrupted, that's the most powerful way to hear these experiences. And and to parlay that into this story, that tells me that Mac's most likely telling us the truth. He believes what he's telling us.
The times I've talked to and interviewed eyewitnesses and the people that, I've actually gotten their you're right. You cannot beat that with a stick. And this guy specifically, like, it was the almost mundane way he was retelling it, that bits of emotion, like you say, when he talked about falling and a broken back and really emphasizing the use of a harness and making sure people could find you. That's something you do when you really know you were looking death in the face and it could have gone not just sideways, but super south real quick. And you got lucky because you did the right things. Well, not the lack of harness, but the rest of it. And then when he gets to the point where it tasted terrible, she's there, the really rich description of the features, and this is something that you almost never hear in any Bigfoot encounters. Granted, most of them are fleeting and at a distance, but just, he's super close and he's, describing not only the patty-like breast, but the actual features and the contours and how un-gorilla-like they are, but still inhuman. I mean, that to me really was compelling. But then let's get to the most harrowing part. This massive entity which reminds me visually in my mind to the last one of the middle to the end sequences in The Legend of Boggy Creek, where the 14-year-old kid with the gun is out there, and all you see is this silhouette that, if it is somebody in a suit, they're wearing stilts and have like 4-foot padding on each side because it's inhumanly massive and it's just at a distance. And for like an old movie, they didn't go gorilla outfit. It really looks terrifying. You can just imagine this thing snorting and grunting, and maybe it's a jealous Squatch boyfriend being like, "You do not throw a titty in that dude's mouth. That is not a small child. That is not even a Bigfoot. The fuck are you doing, Tara? Seriously, I'm going to go over there. I'm going to pound this fucking dude. Come on, don't. Get the titty out. But how fucking frightening this was, and it shows in his voice.
Dude, he's on the ground. His back is broke. He's picked up by a Bigfoot, titty in mouth. He's getting fed. It's obviously terrible. I'm thinking of Luke Skywalker drinking the weird milk and fucking the whatever Star Wars movie that was that escapes me at the moment because I wasn't into it. And then all of a sudden there's this enormous creature that he's in the arms of one creature, and then there's another creature. And for the record, I don't think Max stands to gain anything by saying he was breastfed by a fucking Bigfoot.
He doesn't. No.
He gains nothing.
And he's blind throughout all this because he lost his glasses.
And he can't see. So, I mean, this dude is in some legit shit. Legit.
Oh, absolutely. And again, Derek, it's cool that you broke that up because as a fellow bespectacled dude, I assume you're nearsighted like I am.
Yeah, I am.
The thought of losing your glasses in almost any situation, I mean, my eyes are a shit show. Like everything is a Monet. Like if I don't have my glasses on, it's a big blurry impressionistic mess that I can't function with. So the thought of being there without glasses, yeah, you're close enough to the female, obviously, to make out her features, but this other intimidating thing is a blur, as it probably might have been somewhat anyway at that distance, but still, like as a fellow glasses wearer / bad eye sufferer, doesn't that like strike a chord with you?
A little bit. My eyesight's not that bad. I can't read at a distance, and it makes me feel claustrophobic, so I just wear the glasses all the time. But yeah, I mean, could you imagine knowing something's out there, knowing something bigger and meaner than what's already picked you up off the ground? You weigh 325. It's out there. You can't see it. You don't know where it is. You don't even know what it is or what its intentions are. Just the sheer panic in Mac's brain at this point. I can only imagine, the thoughts and feelings he was having at that time. I'm sure he thought he was dead.
Oh yeah. He had to assume that he was seconds away from Bruiser, which I've now dubbed the guy, Tara and Bruiser. They're a wonderful couple. Throw great Thanksgiving parties. I mean, they're just good people.
They got a trailer out by the river.
Exactly.
It's nice.
The extended family's always welcome. They're just good folk. But that this thing was going to come over and annihilate him, which it could have done easily. Step on his head, knock him to the ground. I mean, anything. A flick of his finger. So, what struck me too is that in his description of the larger, possibly masculine entity that was none too pleased about this whole thing, he goes out of his way to mention the wild boars and the other things that might be responsible for making snorty type sounds. Like, I love that he's just addressing this. Like, listen, I'm familiar with the natural world, especially in my neck of the woods. I know what exists here. And then later on, he talks about bobcats and coyotes and other things that could have, torn him to shreds. And I understand that they make sounds like this, but nothing was like what this seemed to be. Like, tell me if I'm wrong, but I got the impression he could at least see a vague silhouette in the distance of something massive.
I'm unsure about that myself. If you didn't ask me that, I would have been certain. But now that you bring it up, I'm not sure either way.
Listened. We all literally just heard it, and none of us know for sure. But I think so. I'm going to go with this, and of course, we'll get emails if I'm missing the boat. But I think he just at least could denote its massivity, if not any specific details. And I just like say, I love the fact that he talks about the natural fauna, the known fauna, I should say, because these things may well be natural fauna. Obviously, Mississippi. I agree with your assertion earlier that these things cannot possibly exist in all 50 states as they've been allegedly seen. But the whole Honey Island swamp monster, the Louisiana bayous, the way this blends into Mississippi. There's a lot of truly, or even on the other side where it blends into Texas, truly rural swamp-like areas. I've done a little bit of cavorting there, and and I know nothing. I'm a upstate New Yorker who knows a little bit about the woods around here and shit all about proper swamps, but I could easily lose my way. And the people I was with, much more importantly, would spent their entire lives there, who were like professional trackers and hunt and sportsmen and huntsmen and whatever you want to call them. These people were like, no, there's places in here where human beings haven't stepped, maybe ever, maybe in hundreds, if not more years. And there are definitely places with lots of wild game and fish and plenty of space that could support something this big and this dangerous. So that's one of the areas in the United States, besides, of course, the Pacific Northwest, where I think there is suitable habitat for something like this. And again, Mac's completely familiar, it seems like, with all of the known fauna, and seemed appropriately sincere and terrified by the heretofore, at least for him, unknown.
Yeah, what I thought was interesting about this is that he definitely gets a sense of nurturing and comfort from the female. Like, she is literally feeding him, trying to nourish him, which maybe, for, whatever we're dealing with here, obviously, Bigfoot, Sasquatch, whatever you want to call it, for her to pick him up and do that and kind of protect him. Like, he talks about, like, how that ape was like protecting the kittens and whatnot. So this thing easily could have ripped him to shreds or ate him if that was its intention, but it didn't. It picked him up, and it was like motherly to him to like protect him, because obviously she must have known that, he was hurt and whatnot. And then conversely, as we discussed, and he did mention that it was a much larger creature behind her, is back there, snorting and snotting, being all shitty. But the fact that this thing picked him up and didn't hurt him, kind of tried to help him, it's interesting. And again, it sticks out to like, what do you do with that?
With this call, there's one element that sticks out to me above all else, and it's not the breastfeeding, it's not the location, it's the human element, and it's not Mac's human element. It's the human behavior of these two Sasquatches. Right. Now, I'm going to throw a scenario out here. If when you were a kid and you found a bird or a squirrel or something that was injured, or a baby, you put it in a box, and what's the very first thing you did to it?
Try to give it water.
You tried to feed it, give it water. Yeah. And that's exactly what this female Sasquatch did. Like, that's the instant thought is, if we feed it, it'll be okay. So essentially, this is a sort of instinct that these creatures are born with, or all humanoid creatures are born with. I'm sure this exists in the ape world as well. And then you look at the male. He's out with his girl. They're walking the woods looking for food or whatever they're doing, and she finds this creature, and he's like, "The hell with the creature! Let's go! Let's get out of here! We got shit to do." That's me with my wife. Like, I don't care about the plants. Let's go. We got a whole day's worth of work to do, and that's what he's yelling at her. Like, "Let's go, lady! Quit dicking around." Yeah. It's just, to me, if you take away all the Bigfoot stuff, you take away all the sounds, it's human behavior that these creatures are exhibiting. It's not exactly like our human behavior, but there's hints of it there that really intrigue me. I don't know what it means. I'm not a philosopher here. I can't come up with what those ties mean, but I can't help but see that they're there. I just can't ignore it.
No, you're absolutely right. The thing that strikes me, and I'm only going to be pretty much reiterating, is that what the female did. Now, I'm assuming because she's lactating, I don't know if Sasquatches are in a permanent state of lactation, female ones. I doubt it. She's probably a mom. And if you ever see a mom at a mall or anywhere else, and there's a crying child that she knows nothing about, like 17 moms will run to the rescue, all with this like deep nurturing instinct to make sure this kid is safe. Maybe some caring dudes too, though that gets a little worrisome in 2020. So probably avoid that.
Listen,
the female clearly has a mothering instinct, and her first instinct is like Derek said, like when we, found that little injured chipmunk in the backyard, throw it in a shoebox with an old rag for warmth and try to drip some water in its mouth somehow, or milk, or something that you felt when you were young would be nourishing to it. And that makes a ton of sense, to me. And as we all know, because, I still remember, having been born in the 70s and being ancient, that it was still like a mystery when you'd watch a Nova back then, be like, and these things treat their young almost as if they have human emotions. Well, it's patently ridiculous. And I think everyone understands now that what we refer to as exclusively the human trait of humanity, quote unquote, is really something that's present at least in all mammals, in some aspects, birds, much less so in reptiles. I don't know. I don't think amphibians give fucks. So that's just my personal stance on it. But all mammals at least care about their young to a degree, and will, help them and nurture them. And they might not be out there good Samaritan left and right, if that's even a verb, good Samaritan, but still they have the capacity for concern. And why not something that's advanced and possibly related to us? Certainly we see it in chimps and greater apes all the time. Something that's even more advanced than that. Who the fuck knows?
Yeah, no, totally. So that's a really interesting encounter with the Bigfoot. And like I said, just, as Derek had mentioned, and we all talked about, just the sincerity in Mac's voice, the fact that he really has nothing to gain by, retelling this tale. And obviously he suffered a severe injury to his back.
He has things to lose, if we're honest. Sorry to interrupt you, but if he's telling this story and he lives in a small town in Mississippi, it's not going to take much to find this guy, honestly, especially if he broke his back. He's going to be in the hospital. So people are going to know who he is if they want to find him. And he's now going to have that story out there that it's not a flattering story. I mean, let's be honest. It's borderline embarrassing. Sasquatch shoved her titty in your mouth. Like, nobody wants that.
Unless he owns it, he's like, yeah, I took that titty. That's what I did. I'm fucking Mac. Fuck you. I'm not going to tree.
Here's the video.
It really is. It's he like he said, he has a lot to lose by this coming out to his local town folks. So
the world at large. I mean, Derek's spot on here. You can always assess something. Now, I'm not saying that every time someone has written a successful book about a paranormal experience that they are de facto lying, though certainly the more interested in profit, the more your radar has to go up and think, I got to vet this pretty seriously. But this guy, reputationally, both locally and abroad, it's not like he can turn it into a made-for-TV fucking movie. He can't write the Great American Bigfoot book based on this fucking 15 minutes of fucking hell. It's just this weird incident that helps paint a more detailed picture for those interested, i.e. us and our listeners, in this subject, a more complete picture of what Bigfoot or other, living hominoid behavior might be like. But he doesn't stand not only a thing to gain, but a ton to lose, because, especially in small towns in Mississippi or small towns in upstate New York, if, you're going to the place where you see the same people over and over again, and you told the Sasquatch titty story, you're going to fucking get a world of grief, even if some people are sympathetic. So again, the veracity of this, unless this dude is a real psychological masochist and he designed this whole fucking thing so he could be humiliated in public as often as possible and whack off later, this is not what I think happened. There is no reason for this to fucking be a lie.
No, none whatsoever. So,
especially with the details given.
Oh yeah, 100%. I mean, he gets pretty into it, and obviously his family found him. So, thank God he's okay. I mean, that could have killed him
for sure.
That really, he could have really had a fucking terrible ending to that. And I guess by the grace of the Sasquatch, the interdimensional shaman that they are, they, like I said, they're there.
Did the milk save him? Would he have been a quadriplegic or worse if the glorious shamanic interdimensional milk hadn't entered his mouth and healed him from within to making it a mere broken back that he could therapy away from?
Is this like a bad True Blood episode? Is that what?
Yeah, I was going to say, is this? Yeah, are we going into True Blood territory?
The healing powers of Sasquatch's milk.
Yeah.
Should bottle that shit.
Yeah, there you go.
Hell yeah.
Ferment it, sell it, boom, there it is. So you know what? There you have it. Derek, thank you so very much. We got the fucking Mirrored Men. We got the Bigfoot and the breastfeeding. It was awesome. Awesome calls. And again, Derek, please let everyone know where they can find your podcast at.
Well, first of all, thank you guys for having me on. As I told you before we started recording, I don't get to talk to people that don't work at grocery stores anymore. So to have this 2.5 hour conversation has been really nice.
Nice.
You guys weren't privy to that first hour, but there was some interesting stuff in there. You can find me basically anywhere you can find podcasts. Just search for Monsters Among Us podcast. If you have a story you'd like to share, I have a hotline. It's 1-888-608-NIGHT. You just tell your story in the form of a voicemail. You have a 5-minute limit. Call back if you need more time. And you can catch me on Paranormal Con on Camera, Travel Channel, Sundays, at 6 p.m. 6 p.m. Western time. Yes, so 9 p.m. Eastern.
Awesome too. And obviously, we would be remiss if we did not give a very special shout out to everyone's Crypto Den mom, Addie Lloyd. What up?
Hi, Addie.
She is the bomb.
She's pretty awesome.
She is the glue that holds us together because God knows we need an adult. Thankfully, she's there. Thankfully, she's present.
She's many things to a lot of people. She's my introvert. I'm not, extrovert. I'm an introvert. I don't do well with other people, and she forces me to do that. So,
nice.
with the exception of guys like you that I've known forever, but she kind of forces me out of my shell a bit, so I appreciate that.
She takes all of us like little broken creatures and brings the best out. Whenever there's contact, she is an amazing lady, and yes, she absolutely deserves the biggest of shout outs. And you know what? She will get a jackalope from me eventually. That's between me and her. I don't need to hear about this from anybody else. It's been a long time coming, and that's what I'll say about that. But what I will also say is, please, anyone listening, I'm sure you're already familiar with Monsters Among Us. Fucking, if you're not, do yourself a favor. It's awesome. And like Derek said earlier, you really get to hear these accounts from the firsthand source, and it is just extremely compelling. And then, to have it broken down by Derek, who is knowledgeable and brilliant despite his protestations, is so very worth it. So absolutely add that to your crypto paranormal diet, or you'd be a damn fool. And again, also brilliant on TV because he's famous like that. That's what happens.
Yeah.
When you're awesome.
He's a handsome bastard. He's out there. He's doing it. Thank God one of us is out there doing it and is a handsome bastard, because the rest of us can't do it. We look like mutants.
Makeup does wonders, Mark. Let me tell you.
Oh, nice. I'm going to take that.
It's caked on. Even when I shoot at home, it's caked on.
All right, good. I'm going to have to do that. I'll get my beard on nice and done up, get some makeup, get my weird hair taken care of. Yeah, I'm going to pamper myself.
You can do with a spa day, definitely. The fucking, I'm a fucking troglodyte. I don't know. I mean, if they did like the pitch black, like silhouette of me, like I'm a mob informant, then that could be awesome. But no, Mark, you pretty good. And Chris, of course, is a handsome devil. So yes. I think.
All right, so I guess it's just Rob is the unhandsome one here.
That's
what
true.
We're saying? Wow,
but you know what?
Somebody has to do it, I guess.
With beard and brilliance. So
there you go, beard and brilliance. There it is.
Hey,
awesome.
Thank you so
Those are more valuable than appearance anyway.
Always. Right? Awesome.
Derek,
all right,
you're the best. I'm so glad we had a chance to do this. Again, everyone, check out all of his stuff. You will not regret it. And this has been really, really fucking fun. And I can't wait till we do it again.
Likewise. Thanks, guys, for having me on. Thank you guys for listening. I had a hell of a time here tonight.
Awesome. Thank you so very much. And we'll be talking to you soon.